underground films and shot and video films. So I really appreciate you coming on and talking to me, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you again for having me.
So how did you go from loving films to going, okay, I'm going to try, I'm going to make my own thing? Did you see something that made you think maybe I could do this? Or
Oh, I mean, I grew up, I loved movies, loved going to movies, loved horror and sci-fi, would make up my own stories and had thought like, I'd love to be a filmmaker, but when it was time to go to college, it didn't make any sense financially, like I had to go out there
yeah,
have a real career, I guess you could say, and
yeah,
pay my bills and stuff. So
yeah,
it wasn't until I was like pretty much done with college, 4 years in, that I was like, what am I doing? I don't want to do any of these things I'm going to school for. I want to make movies, so I'm going to give it a try. And so at that point, I switched over. That fifth year, I took a couple TV and I went to a community college that had like some TV classes, and nearby was this other school that had a couple film classes. So I got like a little, taste of it. But I remember thinking like, especially because we were using video cameras in the TV classes, that could we make a movie on analog video? It'd be so much cheaper, because trying to figure out how to make it on film, everyone was like, you're going to spend at least $100,000. You're going to
yeah,
need at least $100,000. And I hadn't shot on film. I hadn't really shot anything except for like still cameras, like
yeah,
a little
yeah.
automatic camera. Uh, and then I went to this seminar that John Russo was
Okay, yeah,
holding. It was like the first year he did it, and it had J.R. Bookwalter there,
yeah.
and he talked about how he was shooting movies on analog video and releasing them, and he was making them really cheap. I forget if he had said his lowest budget was 1,500. I think he went even lower, or 3,500, because I think it was 3,500. He had said, and he showed us like Kingdom of the Vampire,
Mm,
and I watched it and I was like, oh, I could raise 3,500. This would be doable. I could
yeah,
raise it and make
yeah,
it
yeah.
myself and not worry about like losing money or losing some investors' money. I went home from that. First thing I did is I shot a video on the antique business, because I had committed to going to Florida for about 6 months to sell antiques. That's what I grew
Right.
up in the antique business, and I would do that to pay for like college, pay the bills.
Yeah.
So while I was down there, I shot this video, and then when I came back, I jumped into City of the Vampires, which cost about $3,500 to make it. So
And you kind of learned filmmaking shooting that feature, like
yeah,
just
pretty much.
doing things wrong and
Uh,
making mistakes and going, fuck, I need to change the way I'm doing this, or whatever
yeah,
it
when I
was.
shot, the antique video, I did stage some scenes in it, and they came out fine. And I
Yeah,
was like, yeah, I know how to make a movie. I've been
yeah,
watching tons of movies. But when I shot City of the Vampires, it was like I watched it, I was like, what was I thinking? It was like I didn't, like I knew I was making mistakes I knew not to make. But I think because it was like this crazy shoot where I was coordinating all these different elements of it, like the cast and the schedule and the
yeah,
food and the locations and doing the effects and doing the sound. Like I was like a one-man crew on that. I did all
yeah,
aspects of it. That I was just making like really easy blunders, like breaking director's angles, and
yeah,
like I remember I wanted to get this master shot for like when all the vampires come into the lair, and I couldn't get all the actors there at the same time, so I broke it up in individual shots, and I shot with this other lead actor for like something like 20 hours of footage, 21
right.
hours of footage, and he was getting more and more unreliable.
Oh
Like he wouldn't
man,
show up, and I had things scheduled,
that's the
so I had to
worst.
fire him and then I ended up bringing in Matt Walsh, from
Mm,
Kingdom of the Vampire, and and then I had to shoot it quick. My favorite Matt was here for or with me, not here, 2 or 3 weeks, but we shot, very, very fast, like
yeah.
every day, which was, a better way to do it for sure. And and again, just because it was just like, madness.
It's an ambitious film too, man. Like it's not like you went, I'm gonna do two guys in a room chatting. Like you're like, let's do, like you were on locations, you at loads of different places, you're shooting at night a lot of the time, obviously. So it's like it was an ambitious like
Yeah,
first
true.
feature. It was cool that you like swung for the fences straight away and was just like, I'm gonna
Oh,
go
well,
make
thank
this
you.
fucking epic, hard to
I,
make. Like that's what I
I mean,
appreciated watching it was
as
like,
an epic for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, I
and
know. I'm shooting nighttime shots with, and maybe I should have done day for night, but I shoot nighttime shots with like my car. I know outside electricity behind these buildings I was shooting at, so I was just using like my car lights, and
yeah,
yeah, it was just it was madness for sure.
yeah. But that
But
film
thank
gives
you.
you, yeah, yeah. I mean, so I watched it recently, and I like the thing for me
Sorry.
was like, uh, I know how it feels because I've just shot a feature on VHS myself, and
Okay.
I'm acting in it myself, and I shot it myself, and I've done everything. For me, it is obviously different because I'm going back to a technology that like was around when
Yeah.
I was young. I was born in '86, so like I was just at the tail end of video shops
Hmm.
and my grandparents having camcorders. But like just logistically trying to shoot on video was hard. Like trying to line up shots when there's no flippable
Yeah.
screen that I can see myself in. Like,
It was a little viewfinder,
is
which was
yeah,
better than film, but at least you kind of knew if it was, bright enough and everything,
yeah,
and in focus as opposed to, the film camera, like a low-end film camera, you would have to measure with the tape
yeah,
measure,
yeah,
light meter, everything. But at the same time, I remember looking through it. I feel like it happened more in City of the Vampires than the antique video, but looking through it and just being like, look, this doesn't look like a movie. When I look at
yeah,
this, what am I doing wrong? Like
yeah, yeah,
I couldn't get it around like with the video, the 30 frames per second and the 4:3
yeah.
framing. Like when we would have filming people approach us about making a movie. I remember this guy had approached me and Tim Ritter to produce his movie and shoot it
Hmm.
and stuff. And he had never shot anything. And I kept telling him like, he had all these big visions for the movie. It was epic. And I kept saying like, okay, well, you need to get your hands on a camcorder and
Yeah.
look through it and see because you need to understand what we can actually get. It's not going to
Mm.
necessarily look like what you're describing, and that would always be my advice because it really you can watch the videos and you can watch the movies on film, and think you're going to get what looks like what it looks like
Yeah.
on film, but
Yeah.
until you actually do it, at least back then it was like you
Yeah.
didn't really know. To me, it was like a shock, and I remember hearing from other people that it was a shock too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's such a disconnect between how you imagine things to be on the page when you're writing it, especially if you
Oh yeah, for sure.
early days and you're writing. So when you like do your first draft, you'll write as big as you want to write. Like you
Yeah,
don't want to limit yourself straight away, right? So you just go, okay,
yeah, exactly.
I'll
I always
I'll
tell
write
people
the
that too.
thing. I'll make it
Yep.
as big as I can. But then usually with each redraft, it gets more filmable until you actually have something you can go make. Like,
Mhm.
I think there's
Yeah.
such a disconnect there between when you start shooting and you think you're going to get these like really epic shots, like in fucking Platoon or something, where they've had a day to set it up and there's like
Yeah.
helicopters and explosions in the background and beautiful slow mo. And then, yeah, you kind of end up with your mates like in the woods by a house and you're just like, what's that? Why is it not? You know what I
I
mean?
know. I
Um,
know. Especially if I didn't have any experiences with lenses and stuff like that to make things look more epic. I just had this zoom lens on this camera, and it took a while, a few productions to start to be able to manipulate, that to get closer to the look. But yeah, I remember, that's a big one. Like I wanted these, epic shots of
mm,
driving to the city and the city sort of like towering over. Syracuse doesn't have a lot of big buildings, but I remember shooting and like the city was this tiny little, the buildings were like this tiny speck in the distance for these
yeah,
driving shots, and it just did not feel epic. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? This does
yeah,
not, yeah, it does not. And then I agree with you. You write it as big as you can to start. So you don't, because if I try to scale it back, I kind of give myself like writer's block. So I'll write it really big,
yeah,
then scale it down maybe on future drafts. And then when you get the locations and you get the actors and you get, the actual effects budget, then
yeah,
you go, okay, well, maybe we don't have 1,000 extras on this shot.
yeah.
Maybe we have like five extras. So,
Yeah, yeah. Was that the thinking behind? I know I'm jumping, but Empire State of the Dead, when you made that into an anthology with a wraparound and then different things made by different filmmakers, was that the thinking there, which is we can do smaller contained stories and then.
Yeah, I mean, I think that developed over doing projects of just learning to keep them smaller and more
Yeah,
contained. Looking for it's tough sometimes, like when somebody comes up with an idea they could shoot in one spot with like a couple actors and it's an amazing story. I'm always envious. So even if I try to figure something smaller, usually some idea comes out that makes it more complicated. But Empire
yeah,
State of the Dead, was easier on me, obviously, because we had a lot of filmmakers who were shooting the segments, and I was just shooting the wraparound. And when I scripted out the wraparound, yeah, I kind of broke it up in two parts. I had the parts with the soldiers and parts with this, drug lord sort of becoming
mm,
like like this new king of the of Syracuse or New York, and so I could break them up into separate shoots
yeah,
and being more contained like that. They were easier to control. And then I could shoot, all the one guy's stuff, which was Wes Reed, aka Jonathan Straight. He was the drug lord dude who I could shoot all in this one building because it had all these different spots. So I could kind of stage it around and have him out for a weekend, and we'd shoot, the opening, and then we'd shoot the stuff later when he's addressing the crowd, and then with the soldiers, sort of the same thing. We shot it over, I think that was maybe 3 or 4 days,
mm,
and it was super cold, but I shot it, all inside and around this one building. So, and I could make it look like, again, it was, multiple locations, and
yeah,
because we had it look like the army base at one point, and then we had it look like this, shelled out building with zombies hiding in it, and then I had them
mm,
out hiding in it, I mean, and then, we had them outside running around it, and so yeah, that just comes out of experience
yeah,
and
yeah.
and also because that was a very low budget production, so I was trying to keep everything within scale.
I really like low budget anthologies. It's like High Eight. You were involved in High Eight as well. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't you who put that together though, right? It was Brad Sykes who put that together, and then I think Wild
Mhm.
Eye did the release. But
Yep.
you had a segment in it. Donald Farmer's in it. Tim Ritter's done a short in it. Toby
Yeah. Yeah.
Sheets did a short in it. Like, kind of all the shot and video legends of that time were involved.
Mhm.
I really like those low budget anthologies, man, because I feel like everybody can make
Oh,
something
cool.
cool that doesn't break the bank, which is nice. But then collectively together, you
Yeah.
get something that people go, "Oh, okay, amazing." So how
I was
so how
watching.
how
Oh,
soon after making City of the Vampires do you go, okay, I'm going to take this seriously. This is going to be something I'm going to try and pursue. Like, you don't start. So SRS was Salt City Video, right, when you first started, but you
yeah,
don't start
video,
that straight
salted video
away, right?
production.
You're just a filmmaker for a while.
Yeah, I had shot the antique video and had released it, I think either when I was shooting City or shortly before,
Yeah.
and it got a good review in the library journal, which ended up getting a bunch of libraries ordering it. So I'd get these big orders. I must have had like a fax machine set up because I remember getting, these dot matrix. I had this dot matrix printer and print
Hmm.
out these orders for like 10 or 20 or 40 units for these library chains, and I never tried to sell that, but I didn't. When I was selling that, I didn't have the aspirations to be a distributor
Yeah.
at that point. When City of the Vampires was done, there was really only like two companies who were releasing that stuff that I knew of, and one was getting out of the business, and the other one had like a horrible reputation.
Okay.
So I was like, well, I don't want to get ripped off. I'll release it myself. And then when I released it myself, I had some other filmmakers reach out to me, like Eric Stanzi. Well, Eric I knew kind of through
Yeah.
Tempe.
Yeah.
Um, and but Tim Ritter, he contacted me when he saw my ads, I think in like Videoscope, wrote me a letter and connected with him. I was like, yeah, I could release your stuff too. Like, they were looking for distributors, so I would sign them and package them, and then we could put four movies into an ad instead of just one.
Mm.
And I knew a bunch of the companies that were buying the stuff out there, and these types of movies, you just had to give them like this film look.
Yeah.
So I was able to go out, and it was a mixed start. Some stuff did really well, like City of Vampires did well, and some of the stuff I picked up, I thought it was a cool movie, but didn't really necessarily know how to market it or
Yeah.
package it, and maybe it wasn't that sellable of a movie. So even though I thought it was cool, it
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily becoming like viral, like
Yeah.
it didn't have like say amazing kills or something that would
Yeah.
get people to buy it, out of the back of these horror magazines. But yeah, so as that developed and I did better with it and became like my basically how I was living was selling these movies. Yeah, it became more of a necessity and dominated things.
Yeah.
I always say I want to get to filmmaking full time and still, trying to work to that all these years later.
Yeah. Yeah. Was it video you were doing, like selling video straight to video shops at that time?
Oh yeah, there was a lot of direct because there was a lot more mom and pop stores still, and
Yeah.
then there was
Yeah.
these mini chains, and then eventually bigger chains, and there was outlets that would sell, that would order so many copies and ship it out, like Rent Rack would ship it out to the mom and pop stores, and as they became more condensed, like Blockbuster was buying so many out, and Movie Gallery, it was tougher because it was hard to get deals sometimes with these companies. But
Yeah.
every so often you get lucky and you'd get one. But I think I was relying probably more on the fans than anything
Yeah.
else at
Yeah.
that point. And not only was I selling movies that I acquired, I had B Movie Theater, which was b-movie.com. That was the title I gave
Yeah.
to it, and I would list all these movies from other companies too that I would just buy finished goods, like if I'd list their VHS or their movies for $20 each
Yeah.
and buy them off them for 10 each, and then I would put them into my site, and I got on there first on the internet. Like there was only one other company, I'm trying to remember the name of it, that I saw on there that was selling these types of movies, and it only had a few. We mostly had Hollywood ones. So I was like the first one to hop on the internet dedicated to
Mm.
underground movies like this. So for a while, I had that all to myself, and
Yeah.
it did, it started strong and stayed strong. It just got better and better. It was
Yeah.
like doing so well with it. So that helped. It wasn't just the releases alone. So every so often, a release would do okay, and the site would be, generate income. And every so often, I'd make one of my own movies, and I'd always give them a little more attention, and they would do a little bit better for the most
Yeah.
part.
So how when you're growing up, what did you see that made you dig into underground films, or move slightly away from
Um,
Hollywood stuff towards the low budget arena?
I mean, I, I loved horror movies, as I mentioned. A lot of the horror movies I like, tend to be low budget.
Yeah.
And I think because, that's what I had to work with in horror. You didn't need a lead actor, so
Yeah.
it was the one, genre where you didn't need a name to sell it. You just really needed more of a great concept or some really great kills in it. And
Yeah.
so I was happy to embrace horror. I loved, horror movies. I managed to see a lot of them, in theaters when they came out, like John Carpenter's The Thing, and which I loved and would always talk about. And my parents wouldn't let me see like the Friday the 13th movies, but I would sneak and watch them, when they came to cable. Or
Mm.
I remember there was a kid at school who would tell me the synopsis of each one,
Yeah.
because he'd get to see him. And then there was these
Yeah.
two kids across the street. One was around my age, and he would talk about the horror movies and the sci-fi movies because they would get to see him all the time, and they had like the famous Monsters of Filmland
Yeah. Yeah.
magazines, at their house, and the Fangorias. So yeah, all this, like, sometimes not seeing the movies
Yeah.
and just hearing about them made them even better
It
for
made him
me,
scarier,
and we
dude.
get that,
Like,
yeah, we get the imagination going, and then I
yeah.
would think, and then when I would see them, they'd be different. Be like, oh,
Yeah.
what if I did this tale? Which I didn't.
Yeah.
There was a lot of movies I haven't made. There's so many
Yeah.
ideas that I've written that I haven't. But so yeah, just I became part of the underground because that was the budgets I had to work with, and
Yeah.
because Hollywood wasn't knocking on my door.
Yeah.
I was able to make movies that the low budget fans like, but there was no one in Hollywood being like, oh, this guy,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
got talent here. We need to hire him.
Yeah.
Sign him to a contract. So, but it was part of, I always say it was like my film school,
Yeah,
making
man.
movies and
Yeah.
learning how to
Yeah.
make them.
How was acting in Gut Pile? I fucking love Gut
Oh,
Pile because I love Evil Dead. So I was like, oh, it's a low budget Evil Dead. I'll buy that. Bought it from Um, Saturn's Core,
Hmm.
fucking great, man. Didn't even realize it was you in it. Like, I don't think I
Oh yeah.
knew. I've like known your name for years and like known the company for years, but I don't think I've known what you look like at all. So I think I watched the entire film and I was like, oh, I didn't realize
Oh
it was
yeah, in
you.
the credits.
Yeah,
Yeah, it definitely looked different then. The acting it was fun. I think I'd push Jerry for a role because I want to try this out. And I watch it now. Well, I haven't watched it in a while. No, no, I did watch when we did the commentary.
yeah.
Yeah, I think Jerry's happy with what I did on it, but I'm definitely like, oh, just cringe,
No, you did good. I thought you were funny, man.
And but it was such a fun shoot because we were staying at this cabin of the producers. His name was Lloyd, and so we were staying there for days and just shooting it and having beer, drinking
Yeah,
beer.
yeah.
And then after that we'd shot a bunch of it, but Jerry, he ended up reshooting almost the entire
All
movie
right.
outside the cabin stuff because he just wasn't happy. He wasn't happy with some of the effects, how they originally came out. And so we went back and we would reshoot this stuff. I shouldn't say almost all the movie, maybe half the movie he reshot. He
Yeah,
reshot a lot of it.
yeah.
And just we'd go like every Sunday night out to his house. He had a bunch of woods behind him. There was a building, garage back there where we shot Vicious Sweet, and
Right.
trails where we shot Vicious Sweet too.
Yeah.
And most of it though was in the woods, like directly behind his house, like the axe attack where the limbs are
Yeah.
flying away, and
Yeah.
Jeff Forsythe just fighting his way through the forest as the forest attacks him. We
Yeah.
just backyard Sunday night, set up the lights, shoot until
That's
I don't
great.
know, midnight, 1 o'clock, and then we'd call it, and then we'd meet up again the next week, and then
Yeah.
sometimes daytime, like we redid that long panning shot around the cornfield,
Oh, I
uh,
love that. That's what
uh,
made me go, "Oh, this is really fucking good." That I think there was good shots before that, but that was the first shot that made me go, "Oh, this is going to be really good." And then I was paying attention
yeah,
to
he
the
did a lot
camera
of
the whole
inventive
time.
shots,
Yeah.
and he was definitely inspired by Evil Dead, and it was
Yeah.
funny, like I think I hadn't watched Evil Dead for a while when we shot it, and then when I rewatched it years later, I was like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
lot of lead shots in
I do
Gunfire.
appreciate though that he didn't just go, "We'll like rip Evil Dead." He went,
Yeah,
what Sam did with the way he moved the camera on Evil Dead was really cool. I'm going to take
mhm,
inspiration from that, and I'm going to move the camera in
yeah,
interesting ways. And that was what I really enjoyed about it. And when I show it to other people, I'm like, it's kind of like a low budget Evil Dead, but also just watch how it's made. Like it's made really cool. Did you do
yeah. That
much?
was all Jerry. I mean, he came up with those shots, and
Yeah,
we just figured out. I mean, some of the rigs he had rigged up ahead of time. Like I remember he just did like boards, nailed together with the camera monitor for
yeah,
that one where it comes up over the top of the Jeff, who's the
yeah,
hunter, and
yeah,
yeah, I did a lot of lighting on it, so I'd just be like, all right, what do you want here? And we'd set it up and we'd try to figure it out if it wasn't working right, or Jerry was very easy to work with, so
mm,
he would take suggestions, but it was really like his vision for sure.
yeah. Did you do much more acting after that in other people's films?
No, I'd done a cameo in City of the Vampires, more out of necessity, and then I play this bodyguard character in Johnny Z that has no lines, came out a couple years ago, and I wrote that with Jonathan Straighten, who we mentioned earlier. He
Yeah,
was in Empire State of the Dead and a bunch of my other movies, and we worked together often. Um, um, and again, I watch it, and it's tough. It's tough seeing yourself up on screen. I didn't really
yeah,
want to do it, but he was insistent, and he had originally wanted me to be his lead in Night of Something Strange, which was like teenagers. I'm like, Jonathan, what,
yeah,
you the lead in this?
yeah,
So, but yeah, I mean, I think I'd rather focus behind the camera. So, but
yeah. Do you find it hard to watch your stuff with people, things that you've made? You just see mistakes, or can you watch it with an audience and enjoy it?
yeah, I mean, I used to say with like City of the Vampires, I wish I could just release it with a commentary only audio track.
Yeah,
Like you can't ever hear it without me talking
yeah,
because I'd want to sit next to him and be like, yeah, well, let me explain why this sucks,
yeah,
right? But
yeah,
yeah, yeah. I mean, anything, even you do see all the problems and mistakes, and And you do wonder, like, what are they thinking? Like
That
they're
yeah,
probably thinking, oh, why didn't he shoot it this way or something?
yeah,
So yeah, it's tough. Nothing
yeah.
is quite unless you're doing it yourself with these budgets and wearing this many different hats. It's really hard, to convey that to people and to think that they understand that when they're watching it.
I think that's a reason why a lot of low budget stuff doesn't get given the appreciation it deserves.
Mm.
Because if you go out and try and shoot somebody walking across the street, then traffic will stop and fucking dogs will run into the road, and you know what I mean, like a
Yeah.
million things will go wrong just trying to shoot something that simple. So trying to shoot something complicated is so difficult, that
Yep.
unless you've done it, you kind of don't. You just go, oh, this looks cheap, or the acting's not that great. But it's like it's so hard to do any of these things. Like, to do
Mhm.
them all yourself, then you do get the appreciation for it a lot more. Um,
Yeah.
the last time I watched
Shooting.
something that I had made with an audience, I was just at the back, and it was like a found footage Bigfoot film with me as the lead. So the whole fucking film is just because it's found footage. The fucking camera's on me the whole time. I'm talking the
Yeah.
whole time because it's like a vlog, and I was just looking at the back of people's heads, just thinking like, what are they? Do they hate it? Do they think it sucks? Are they bored? Like someone would scratch their head,
Yeah.
and I'd be like, they're bored. They're definitely bored. Like,
I know you're always waiting to see the reactions. Like, here comes a funny part. Are they gonna
yeah,
laugh?
I hope it
Are
lands.
they gonna jump? Are they gonna react
Yeah,
to it? And it's always interesting to see what they do react to because sometimes, they'll surprise you. It'll be a part that you're like, oh, I mean, I thought that was kind of funny, but not that funny. So they think
yeah,
it's funnier than I do. But you made a point about like even just cross. It's funny how much traffic there is on a street when you want to have somebody
yeah,
crossing it and you can't
yeah,
afford to have the street stop. Be like, okay, like
yeah,
just as short I did, like I knew the street front was really busy, but we got out super early in the morning, stay ahead of traffic, and even then, we had to really watch the traffic and work quickly because it was just getting, it was building up fast.
yeah,
So yeah, like, I'll lean more towards like isolated spots
yeah,
sometimes, shoot out in the woods, in this, private land where hopefully no one will come,
yeah,
around. And then, then you have to deal with stuff like, is the weather going to cooperate that day?
yeah.
So,
Power and so when you
yeah.
write Vicious Suite, then you write it for that location you have access to.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, I'd written the cell room. I'd written that before I had the room. Um, and then Jerry, I think, offered me the space. Yeah, because I think I was I put an ad out for people. I had the finished script. I put an ad out looking for people who wanted to work on movies together, and then they contacted me, and then I'd run the script past them, and then Jerry was able to fill a lot of the locations for that, and then the rest I reached out to, and it was cool to find who would be cooperative. Like there was this grand theater called the Genesee. I think it was called the Genesee Movie Theater. I might be remember that wrong, and it closed shortly after that because the owner sold the building. It wasn't that the theater was doing bad. But they let me come in and shoot, like a whole morning. No hassles, no. They didn't charge me anything from what I remember. They could have, but it was probably a super low fee.
Mm.
And it was an awesome location to shoot in. And then it's also cool to be the last stuff that was shot there. On my first one, there was a theater in Manlius, which was about 45 minutes away from me, that he let me shoot
Yeah,
the finale in. And it was a thin theater. Like I had to redo all my blogging because I pictured like this really big
yeah,
theater with like three rows, and
yeah.
the three columns, seats, and he had just like this one thin column of seats, and then like one that was like five. So,
Right.
but figured it out, and no one's ever questioned how people are managing to hide
Yeah,
in this
yeah,
tiny
yeah,
theater and stuff. But yeah, so go out. I remember like looking for locations for City of the Vampires and asking like this building, like was like, "Can I shoot in your alley?" The guy was like, "I don't want video cameras anywhere near my business." You know what he was
Right.
doing there.
Yeah.
But most times, you'd be surprised how cooperative people would be in terms of like, "Oh, this sounds awesome. You're making a movie? Yeah, come here." Like Mother's Restaurant, where we shot the
Right.
dialogue scene with Tyler and her boyfriend, and Vicious Sweet. They let me shoot all morning. Again, I don't think they charged me anything. It was before the restaurant opened up, so we had it like empty and could do whatever we want in there.
Yeah, that's
And it was
cool.
multiple days there too. So
Yeah, yeah. That's like one of the main things that makes me super excited is if I start to get locations and I can actually see something come together, then I'm like, okay, this could actually exist. It could be something that.
mhm.
What makes you pull the trigger on an idea to go, okay, this is the
Mhm.
next thing I'm going to make? Do you think it's the
Uh,
makeability, the access to
for the
things, or?
for the stuff that I direct myself, it'll be just a story I feel like
Yeah,
telling at that particular
yeah,
point. The one I'm most excited about.
yeah.
The uh, for the movies I produce. Sorry, I got file downloading. I just got to empty the trash because it's saying I'm almost out of room here.
No problem.
Um, the For the stuff I produce, it's definitely more financially driven. It'll be a movie that a title and a synopsis that will at least be the title of something I think I can sell.
Yeah,
I as being a distributor, I see what's doing well in the marketplace. It's doing well for me, or I follow and see what's doing well for similar companies,
mm,
and then be like, oh yeah, I could do one of those, and then I do let the filmmakers pretty much run with the ideas, like Emotional Support Shark, which we just finished on
yeah,
a Kickstarter. Like I kind of pictured it more like a person with a shark who, like the shark's attacking people who are being mean to them or
yeah,
whatever and stuff, and Mark fashioned into like this, like I figured it have some B movie campiness to it, and Mark fashioned into this like dark serial killer movie with a guy with like this shark arm
yeah,
killing people. So it's not even like the artwork, which usually I don't like to get that far away. But with Mark, like I just let him run with whatever idea he has.
yeah.
Trying to think of and there was another one, but I forget which. But again, as long as I have the title and some really cool artwork, they can pretty much make the movie that they want to make.
I do like how your stuff has like like a cohesiveness across the releases. Like, are you getting the same artist to do the artwork? Are you doing the design yourself? Is that why you have that?
Yeah, I have a few different artists that I work with. Yeah, I'm not that good at drawing, so I wouldn't be able to do this. These guys do an amazing job,
Yeah,
and
man.
yeah, I mean, definitely key for selling these movies is killer artwork.
On
So
it's also
it's
like as
real
someone who
important.
buys your films, I have to put them all next to each other on a shelf because they have the
Okay.
same spine. You know,
Oh
the
yeah,
lines, the colored lines on the spine, like they
yeah.
look really nice when you have like 10
Oh,
together.
cool.
So like,
Yeah, I don't actually have them myself, so
I
that's good to know. Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
put them all together because they make like a little SRS section that's like, yeah, these all match really nice. So that is a nice thing as a collector.
When I started back in the VHS
Yeah,
era, occasionally I would do pretty good with packaging. Like City of the Vampires had pretty good packaging, and then some would be a complete miss. I think like our original Savage Harvest, was that like a Native American looking
yeah,
drawing on there that didn't sell well. So later we re-released it with the skull,
yeah,
bloody, demon skull on it, which was, even then I think I still kind of struggled with it. But if I had done that first, it would probably have been a better release. So I didn't really like, so many filmmakers wouldn't send us photos. It's not like now where you can find a ton of artists. I was
yeah,
working out of Syracuse, so, there wasn't like the internet. I could look somebody up.
yeah,
I tried working with some local people. They were, unreliable or just weren't doing the work I needed. So we do like frame grabs, and I'd be like, that's good enough. It'll sell, but it wouldn't sell. It
yeah,
would sell to fans, but some of these movies we'd release them, it'd sell like a dozen copies ever, and that's why they're like super rare and go
yeah,
for big bucks on eBay. But I did learn, and part of that was House Shark. When I had done really cool illustrated art for it, and I had learned that like when we were doing the sort of when I started re-releasing VHS and jumped back into the VHS arena with like the specialty, 50 to 100 unit releases,
Yeah.
and the had the book boxes which held the DVDs and VHS, and then we
Mm.
did the big boxes, and we were doing clamshells. Like how important that artwork was, because I'd hear about people who collected VHS, and
Yeah.
they would display this cool artwork from old releases, like like paintings. They pull them
Yeah.
out on the shelves and they leave them out. So
Yeah.
I started up in my game in terms of the packaging at that point. And then when House Shark came out, I was, I listed for release. Um, I use a distributor called MVD for the bigger,
Yeah.
hitting the bigger market. I have like the direct to fans, and then MVD would handle like the stores, and they would handle the digital. Um, and so I listed it, and they came back to me like, oh, I think we can really sell this, but we need real art for
Mm.
it. So he's like, it's going to be expensive, but trust me, to do it. So I went to a company in England. I forget the name of them. And they made me realistic artwork for it. And sure enough, it did. It still does amazing on digital. It got into Walmart, multiple times, and it sold like crazy. And then I really it just sort of like a bell went off. I've
Yeah.
been hearing like a light bulb that I was like, oh yeah, like
Yeah.
this artwork really has to be geared and done properly. So I still had the illustrated, which I'd use for the Indiegogo. I still use for direct to the fans, and then I had this realistic artwork for the bigger picture,
Mm.
and doing these two different sort of releases of it. I think the contents for the most part were the same, though the wide release DVD has a lot less special features, where the Indiegogo had like a 2 disc set and stuff.
Yeah.
But just making sure that like if someone looks at that they're going to want to know more about it,
Yeah.
and they probably want to see it. So yeah, just super important. I can't stress that enough.
And the old school approach to art, illustrated art, painted art, like Enzo Sciotti's stuff when he was doing the Rambo covers, back in the day,
Mhm.
and like there's people like Tom Hodge now or Graham Humphreys, like he was doing Evil Dead when it came out on Palace Pictures. Now he's still doing amazing paintings now for films. Like they're
Mhm.
getting like really good key art from these artists that instantly goes, this is a genre film. Horror fans will
Mhm.
like it or whatever it is. I think you get that shorthand, like looking at like a Wizard Video big box from like when he was doing them, and you just go, yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's me. You know what I mean? Like I remember
Yeah.
like seeing some of the hobo with the shotgun art when Jason put that out,
Oh yeah.
like, and immediately going, yeah, this is something that I'm
True. That
up
one made
for.
you stop and go, I need to see this movie before you
Yeah,
even saw a trailer for it.
yeah.
Um,
It's how I
yeah,
saw
I mean,
Day of the
those guys
Reaper.
knew. Wizard knew,
Yeah,
like
man.
you said, they did these amazing paintings, and that's what, when you pick up that movie, the artwork is often better than the movie, right? So
Yeah,
you
yeah,
gotta see this, especially back in that day, like when I'd watch those movies, I'd be let down a lot of
yeah,
times. Now, as I've gotten older, and
yeah,
my appreciation has grown, especially making movies at that level, like that the movies hold up even when they don't match the artwork. I still love them. I think
yeah,
I was going to mention this earlier because, like, something like when you watch Mark Bologna's movies, and especially when he was working with his brother,
yeah,
they were really rough, but you could see how much heart was put into them. I say this all the time. Like you could just tell there's an extra special element of that.
yeah,
And like you mentioned Dave for a second ago,
yeah,
like Tim's stuff, you can really tell that
yeah,
they love horror movies and they love making movies. And it makes you not only look past, the rough parts, but like I said, it gives it sort of an extra element of enjoyment.
yeah.
You're watching kids, just have fun doing
Yeah,
it.
especially on something like Channel 13 when you're like seeing the like shorts, and like there's Super 8 shorts, there's VHS stuff as well, and it's like you're watching a love for filmmaking for an hour and a half, which as a filmmaker is like, I don't know, it's just gold, isn't it? It's just amazing. It gives you that
Yeah,
warm, snuggly feeling
exactly.
inside that
Yeah.
I got from like
In Death
renting.
Reel, even more so.
Yeah,
Like their old
yeah,
spray shorts, you can tell they were just like
yeah,
having so much fun, just kids shooting stuff. They even Nightmare Vacation, they even shot stuff when they're on vacation. They were always making movies,
yeah.
always thinking about making movies, and always shooting stuff to make movies.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. I love how it just becomes part of what you do in your life and things that you do then you put back into the films. I was editing
Yep.
today for a web series I'm making, and I went on holiday last year for my partner's birthday, and we rented this van and went like around North Wales. So I just shot as much as I could in this camper van while I was there. Like I shot
Oh, that's
it
cool. Yeah.
speeding round, like going round corners fast and blowing up leaves. And I shot all my, it's like a monster hunting show. So I shot all my
Mhm.
intros for every episode I could possibly do. Um, so
Oh,
like
cool.
we're like
Yeah.
on holiday, but then in between pulling up to places on holiday, I'm like, welcome to Monster Hunt this week. We're in, you know what I mean?
That's the way
But
to do
it
it. Yeah.
came in like, I didn't look at it. And now that I've like finished writing the rest of the series and I'm cutting stuff in, it's so invaluable for linking all my scenes and everything. It's
Mhm.
like, it's nice to just make it a part of your life till when you're like stockpiling stuff away for rainy days and it comes in handy again, you know?
Yeah, sometimes the movie forms out of just shooting that footage. Like you don't
Yeah,
have anything in mind. You shoot all this footage, and then you're like, oh, like, okay, so a travel horror movie, people in a camper, or a guy in a camper. Like it could, and then you start to formulate this idea, and then you just shoot a little more footage for it, and you have a movie.
yeah, yeah. It's great. The newer stuff that you've done, there's a definite like tonal shift towards horror comedy. There's a lot more like She Kills is like a grindhouse exploitation thing, but it's
Mhm.
funny. Like there's a lot of funny stuff in it. There's a lot of
Yeah.
gross out stuff in it, like the um, dude like farting and the poop going everywhere in the van and the squirrel
Yeah.
exploding and like that guy's mustache. Do you know what does me about that guy's mustache though? Is not just how ridiculous the mustache is. Is that scene where the dude goes in and he's like, "Oh, someone's fucking picking off the gang or whatever," and he like really weirdly slides off the bed when he's getting out of bed. That's the shot that makes me laugh the most in the film.
That's funny. That's good.
Was comedy always something that you really wanted to do? Did it slowly creep in?
Um, I don't know why I didn't embrace it more earlier. I mean, I felt like some of the movies, earlier stuff would have these, moments of levity, like where you're meant to laugh out loud, but for the most part, were pretty serious, and
Yeah.
those were the stories I wanted to tell. But as I hung out more with Jonathan on Clay, and we joked around a lot, he had said to me, he's like, "Why don't you put your humor more in the movies? Like and do all these sort of crazy things that you joke about." We would joke about these, that's where She Kills a Night of Something Strange came from. We would joke about these crazy scenes
Mm.
in these movies that we would shoot, and I think we'd be trying to top each other and describe how crazy they were. And that's, what happened with City of the Vampires. As I wrote it out, I kept thinking, like, what could be more insane for this
Yeah.
moment? How can I push this, make this even more crazy? And then some of it just came, from, just the silliness of life. Like, there's a story with Jonathan talking about his girlfriend, and he was being all kind of cocky and stuff. And then she, like, because they had been fighting, and then she called up and like broke up with him. And I was described as him just kind of melting in a seat when it happened.
Yeah.
And so that was where that melt off the
Okay.
bed
Cool.
came from, because that would be my impression of Jonathan getting
Yeah.
that call. How he reacted to it. They did get back together, by the way.
Right.
So we'd just be like, we'd be acting it out for Trey, and then have Trey do it.
Yeah.
And but why? I just think, probably because of Jonathan, and also, when you're working this low budget, like She Kills was great because I couldn't do anything wrong in that movie. If something went bad, I could use it in the movie.
Yeah.
Didn't I wasn't stressed that, like, oh my God, this shot had a little bump in it, or
Yeah.
or this, prop was out of place, and this actor blew his line, or so House Shark, there was less options for Screw Up, but there was more options for improv too. There was
Mm.
stuff that they would joke, when they were doing rehearsals, and I'd start laughing because I'd be setting up and hear them, and I'd be like, oh, that's funny, let's add that in. And it made the movie longer and longer. But even like when I was writing it, I kept adding more and more goofy scenes to it, and just kept expanding. I'd rewatch Jaws or something, be like, oh, I don't have the spoof at that moment. What if I did
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
And the shorts I've shot since, which I haven't really released, it's been a mixture of humor and serious. So I think I want to get back on a roll here soon enough with making movies, and I think you'll see the movies themselves we'll have more of a mix. There'll be a greater mix of serious or more be on the serious side with good moments of humor. I think I'm better at making the characters more colorful
Mm,
and not be afraid to make the moments a little more absurd. And then I might do some that are like pure comedy, and I might do some that are say more like 90% serious. I have a bunch of scripts that I've written
yeah,
that I'd like to attack, but. So I'm not set on horror, but that was kind of my horror, or that was sort of my horror comedy phase for sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And in there we had Empire State of the Dead, which has those funny moments too, but it was played a little more serious. Yeah.
yeah. When you're shooting something for CGI, how much does that alter your process? Do you double things for sharks so you've got an eye line, or do you just have people
Um,
react and then?
yeah, I'm trying to think how much I've shot for CGI at this point. There was some stuff, I envisioned, like I knew some of the effects for how Shark would be digital
Mm,
and planned for. I'm trying to think of a specific we had to worry about eye lines. Like I know there's a shot like with the shark swallows the Ronald with the grenade, the head real estate dude, and the shark kind of like blows up like out of a Looney Tunes cartoon. It's
yeah,
like it's puffs out some smoke and stuff. Like that was simple because that was like I shot just a plate of the background and I shot the shark
yeah,
in front of the screen and green screen and but yeah, I mean, there's not a ton of planning ahead of time because mostly I've relied on practical effects. So if anything,
yeah,
we've done some planning for for the effects on set, but not for necessarily dealing later. And then some stuff. Oh yeah, I did have and she kills the stuff in space.
yeah.
Because I shot them separate. I didn't have to worry too much about their eye lines because they were both floating in space, so I could make them sort of line up
Yes,
as
you
I
could
need.
like.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
Just as long as like Jenny's character was like looking up, so I knew like okay, she's
yeah,
seeing the demon skull here, or she's seeing the eyeball here, and and then the hand was the right angle to shoot like
yeah, yeah.
electric balls or whatever, so yeah.
So are you in like pre-production or anything now? Are you writing anything at the moment? Like, what have you got planned
Um,
feature-wise?
I just recently moved
Right.
back in the
I said that
fall,
like you're
so
not busy and like I know you have a lot going on and you're running a
yeah,
distribution
always
company.
busy. I don't understand why I can never catch up, but
Yeah.
and I've signed a ton of movies this year, and
Oh,
like even a
cool.
big year. I've been doing really good with the kaiju stuff,
Yeah.
um, like putting that stuff out, and that's built kind of this whole new audience for the company. They have like people like you, like the shot and video stuff and the retro
Yeah.
stuff, and that was always sort of the bread and butter, and now the kaiju stuff and doing the productions, which are sometimes a mix. We sometimes have some kaiju in them or monsters, and then some are more played for straight. But I did write a lot during like the pandemic. After House Shark, I kind of felt like I went back to film school. I started like studying movies again, studying videos, reading film books. I bought hundreds of film books over the last several years here. That I just
Yeah.
every day I'm reading through a new one, and um, so I have all those that I wrote. But it's funny, all those that I wrote, the one I want to do first is the one I'm working on now.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to at least finish the first draft of that soon in the next few months, and then get some opinions on it, and then start to fine tune it and figure out how to do it. So I'm hoping, I'll do that one. And then, if all goes well, I'd like to be back and doing I was for a while doing like a production every year
Yeah.
myself, either I was directing it for the most part, or if I was producing it, I was like very hands-on with it, like Night of Something Strange. I think that year I didn't shoot anything, but I was on his set for
Mm.
several weeks, well, a couple weeks, and heavily involved in it, and heavily, I co-wrote the script and watching, he'd sent me his rough cuts and I'd offer him editing advice. And then one year was the short for High Eight, that's what I shot
Yeah.
that year. But like to shoot something every year and get back on a roll with that.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what you do next, man.
Thank you.
And also, thank you for the Tim Ritter collection and the Truthful
Oh,
Dare
you're
Legacy
welcome.
collection. I just bought both from Film
Oh,
Treasures in the UK and spent. So I did them all, but then I did all the commentaries as well. Like, I think I did all the commentaries And
Oh,
like
cool.
having Dirty Cop No Donut 1 and 2 on the same thing was amazing, and like Joel's
Oh, the
commentary
shot
was
on video
amazing.
years one too. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely love it, man. So thanks for helping
I'm really
getting me
happy
into
with
that
both
stuff.
those sets. Yeah.
They're beautiful, mate, and the amount of extras is amazing. Like really, really
Yeah.
great. Um,
That's Tim, man. He'll make. I mean, not only has he already made a ton of stuff which we can draw on, he'll make a ton of new extra ones. Like he really embraces that
yeah,
aspect of it,
yeah,
and
it's really
he
cool.
loves talking about the movies, and he likes delivering for the fans.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate you putting that stuff out, man. And
You're welcome.
your approach to filmmaking and your obvious like enjoyment that you've kept going, and you can see it in your films. Like that's what I mean about the comedy stuff. You've still got that like making films is fun, and it translates on the
For sure.
screen even after 20, 30 years of making features and releasing them. um, so
Mm.
yeah, let people know where to find your stuff, where they can check you out.
I mean, I guess start with srscinema .com or srscinemastore.com. You can go on there. There's a new section that'll tell like what's coming up for release and what's like on, doing fundraising, what we're producing, and that's where I'll keep people updated. And then of course, social media, probably most active on Facebook, the SRS page on Facebook. I'm always posting updates there about like what's happening, what's coming out, what we're planning. Those are the places. The best, business I do is direct with the fan base that's built up over the years. They really support the company, and
Yeah,
and then but if you do, if you're out and about and you see the movies in stores and you don't have them, definitely get them there. The wide release, the digital, has been doing great for us. If you can't afford to buy them, catch them on Tubi for free,
yeah,
and or reach out to those companies when they don't list it and tell them like, hey, I see this movie's out and you don't have it,
yeah,
can you get it on your channel? And if it's not Tubi, there's so many others out there: Amazon, Fossum,
yeah.
Voodoo, Fandango, Plex. Any of
Can you
those,
still put stuff on
plenty
there
of free.
yourself? Do you need to go through like an aggregator or just another distributor to
I,
get them
I
on there?
rely on aggregator pretty much for all
Right.
those. It's
Yeah,
too
yeah.
much. Years ago, I just wanted to sell the company. I'd kind of whittled down my wholesalers to like four companies because
Right.
there would always be a company, I had so many, and then they would start to not pay their bills, and I would, I just get frustrated with them. And after a few months, whatever, maybe 6 months, I'd just be like, all right, it's been going on too long. I'm done with you. So
Yeah.
I went down to like four companies that had wholesale too, and I started reaching out to say, does anyone want to buy, my catalog? And MVD said, well, we wouldn't buy your catalog, but we would take over releasing your stuff. And they had a good rep. I gave them a chance. They've been great.
Yeah.
But it became kind of, at first I was going to just have them handle all the business, but then it wasn't generating enough income. So, I started going back to the fans direct with I had licensed up b-movie.com
Mm.
stake because it never bounced back. But I ended up going direct to the fans with like those VHS releases, and then I was like, oh, what if I put these on Blu-ray? Nobody's putting these on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
And I put on Blu-ray, and then they did like amazing. And then sort of rebuilt up the fan base and expanded it. And so it's like a two-part thing now. We do. If you come to srscinemastore.com, you'll get like the movies that I've signed, these limited edition, 100 to 1,000 units we'll do with like mini posters and sometimes O cards and uh, and then once that's done, or even before that's done, like 6 months later, MVD. I also work with Bayview. They'll release it wide,
Mm.
and now I'm starting to do the Blu-rays to them as well. But originally, I was going to be the only one with the Blu-rays, but they would release like the DVDs and they would handle the digital.
Yeah.
And it's too much work to chase after all these accounts for me.
Yeah.
Like with selling direct to fans, that just get paid. It's the full amount. Don't have to worry about returns usually.
Yeah.
Just collect the money, move on, and it can still be a lot of work, but with dealing with all these little companies to giant companies, getting them to pay their bills, yeah,
Mm.
it's good to have a bigger company like that handle it. You give them a cut, obviously, but
Yeah.
they also are skilled. They have good dialogue with these companies, so they know how to help the stuff sell there. They make sure the stuff gets some extra attention, as opposed to if I had just gone there as a small company.
Yeah.
with a few titles. They're going there with 20,000 titles.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice to be able to get your stuff in the UK as well. I really appreciate being able to get it over here. Thanks so much, Ron. Thank you for taking the time to speak to me.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, and thanks
Thanks
for
for
supporting the movie.
yeah, man. Everything you've done for low budget films and low budget filmmakers. Appreciate it, man.